Praise be to Jesus Christ and welcome to Catholic Forum. I'm your host, Deacon Jim Thorndale. I'd like to welcome all those who might be joining us on public TV and those who are joining us on podcast. You know, one of the most sacred sacraments in our church, the sacrament of marriage, so often starts out with all the great intentions of the world, but sometimes couples just somehow go down the wrong road at times, and their marriage becomes disastrous and difficult. And you know, it's the problem today in our world is that so many couples have followed the way of the world rather than the teachings of the church in regards to the sanctity and the validity of the marriage. And what happens is we end up as Catholics with not much better of a divorce rate than that of the secular world, and we have to ask ourselves why. And the reality of it is that we need to get back, first of all, to better catechesis with the people that are getting married. But I have to say this, nobody does it better to bring couples back into a sacred relationship than the Catholic Church and a group known as Retrouvaille. And I am happy to have today with me a group, Julie and Tony Gessner. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. And you are the coordinators for the local Retrouvaille, correct?
Yes, we are.
That's correct.
You know, did I go wrong on my assessment of marriage? It really starts out so well in many instances, and yet lack of communication, lack of understanding what the sacrament is, many marriages start to go their own way. And we end up in disaster at times.
Correct, yeah.
And we need to find a way, number one, to stop that onslaught. But second, we need to find a way to bring them back. And I think Retrouvaille really has hit on something. And that's what we want to talk about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's get into what Retrouvaille is. First of all, let's ask how long it's been around.
It started in Canada in 1977. A priest saw that there was a need for it, and they developed this program. And slowly, over the next few years, it spread over Canada and then into the United States.
Okay.
It came to Grand Rapids in 1992.
Okay.
It was started with help from the Lansing community and the Detroit community, and some donations from the Catholic Information Center,
okay.
and has been in Grand Rapids ever since.
Okay. Retrouvaille, French word. What are we talking about?
Rediscovering.
Rediscover. So it's really an understanding of rediscovering who your spouse is and what a marriage means.
Right.
Exactly.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. So as people start to get into this understanding of what Retrouvaille is, let me ask you this question. In your journey, have you known people, or are you part of Retrouvaille? How did you get involved in Retrouvaille?
Sure. Well, we came to Retrouvaille back in 2007.
Okay.
That's when Tony and I had come to Retrouvaille. We were at a point in our marriage where disillusionment had its face. We lived a life for a very long time where from the outside looking in, we were just fine.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
people would not have known that we were in a situation where we were beginning to be in trouble.
Yeah.
2007 came around, and just a series of events. I could barely look my husband in the eye and say, I love you.
Oh.
And the pain and the bitterness that we were starting to became our life, and we needed a way out.
Yeah.
And
Can I ask you this question? Yep. Was the world stealing your marriage?
The world was leading us down paths that were not healthy for our marriage.
Okay.
Started living for our own interests.
Yeah.
And not for that
Yeah.
sacrament of marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the key to that whole understanding of marriage, is this unconditional love and commitment to one another. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I had to have that sense of what it is. Yes.
we began counseling right away at that point, and it was very, very helpful. But it wasn't exactly where we needed to become a spiritual marriage that we wanted to live.
Yeah.
And so Tony started searching on the internet and came up with a word and called retro something, and couldn't pronounce it. We didn't know what it was. We knew we had been on a weekend something similar in the past, but we had no idea what to expect. So.
Did you first pursue secular counseling or spiritual or
Secular counseling.
secular counseling? Okay.
And that in itself was very helpful, but
Okay.
it again was not exactly where we wanted to be as a couple, and
Okay.
kind of came into Retrouvaille by, we believe, intervention, divine intervention, to say, you know, who's going to come up with a word like Retrouvaille on the internet?
Yeah, exactly.
So just by happenstance, so that's how we came to Retrouvaille, into the program, and immediately began immersing ourselves in the teachings of Retrouvaille.
Okay.
And we believe it's just been an incredible gift for us.
When you first decided to try Retrouvaille, obviously you both were open to it.
Yeah. I judge more than Julie.
Okay.
It was me who found it on the internet, and just was searching for that thing that was going to push us over the hump, because like Julie said, the counseling was getting us to a point, but not to where we wanted to be.
Exactly.
We weren't happy with our marriage. We were existing
Yeah.
in our marriage. We had made it through the trauma and didn't come out the other side happy or happier than we were before.
Yeah.
So that's what led me to search and ultimately find Retrouvaille.
Okay. So, did you go a little bit kicking and screaming?
Oh, no. Well, I was very kind of apathetic to the situation. He
Okay.
had mentioned that he'd found this on the internet, and I was kind of, yeah, whatever. You know, we've tried some things before, but we'll go. And as the weekend approached, I became more and more nervous and very apprehensive about what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But when we got there, I realized that I wasn't all by myself anymore. You know, I just looked around, and we are not alone is kind of a
Yeah.
big theme in Retrouvaille, and it just really hit me hard that I'm not the only one,
Yeah.
right? And it was very comforting.
Yeah, I'm sure it would, because you know there's something about when you're sitting with other people who are going through the same experience that you can kind of open yourself up a little bit without feeling unguarded. You can kind of let your guard down a little bit, because they're gonna be able to relate to you on what you're talking about. So you went through this weekend.
Yeah.
Is it a full weekend that you're there?
It's a full weekend. It actually starts at 7 o'clock on Friday, and it doesn't end until 4:30 to 5 o'clock on Sunday.
Okay.
And it's a lot of work.
Okay.
It really is. And then additionally, you're not going to cure problems in one weekend.
Right.
So we have what we call our post program, which
Let
is
me ask you this before we go any further with that. You came out of this Retrouvaille weekend. How did you feel at the initial onset when you came out of it?
let's just say we started the weekend sitting about 3 feet apart,
Okay.
and by the end of the weekend, we were on top of each other.
Yeah.
Just a renewed sense of hope, and seeing that there was a future, there was a possibility we
Yeah.
could get back to
Yeah.
where we had, or better.
Yeah.
And I believe it has gotten better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's God's providence.
Yep.
So you came back home, kind of on a spiritual high, you
Yeah,
might say,
yep.
from this whole thing. What did it take to continue on with this? What do you have to do? What's the ongoing formation on that?
Well, actually, that first week started, like you said, on a high, and by about Wednesday night, Thursday, it started to get a little anxious,
Yeah.
a little second guessing. But these post sessions, they really get to the grit of what your marriage is and break
Right.
it down to basically 6 facets of marriage, family of origin, all these things that impact how you approach your marriage.
Yeah.
And help you attack it and digest it and work through it together as a couple.
Yes.
Right, and the post program really brought a sense of safety and security,
Yeah.
right? That we were following the outlines the way that they were presented to us, that gave us a sense of communication and security with each other, that we could go to those levels, that we
Okay.
could take and have those discussions that were outlined for us. So,
Okay. You know, it's funny you mentioned that too, but I heard you say family of origin. You know, people don't realize what a factor that is in a marriage, and sometimes we never address that issue.
Right.
And those can create tremendous amount of tensions if
Yep.
not addressed at the beginning of a marriage.
Absolutely.
So that's important. So here you're coming out on the light side. You're coming out to start to see the light again, right? Seeing hope for your marriage. Now, when did you go to Retrouvaille?
2007.
2007. So you've been at it for what, 7 years now?
Yeah.
7 years. Now, what got you involved as coordinators?
The Holy Spirit.
Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. We.
It was definitely the Holy Spirit. Yeah, we had finished our post program as 12 sessions that you go to in 6 weekends.
Okay.
So as we were continuing on the process, we have a program, it's called CORE. It's Continuing Your Retrouvaille Experience, that you go to once a month following your post sessions. And our very first CORE was what we call a discernment. And during that discernment was a time to bring in new leadership to Retrouvaille. And we were called,
we were
definitely
called
called by the Holy Spirit to serve in the Retrouvaille program in a bigger way.
Praise be to God.
Yes, and I really had to discern that process and say, is this right for us? And here we are. So,
to. But it really was one of the best things for us, because it kept us active. It kept us walking the walk,
Yeah.
not just talking the talk.
Yeah. And you really have to continue to do that, like anything else.
Absolutely.
You have to
Marriage
keep
is
forming that marriage every day.
Yep, they go
Right.
through ups and downs just like life.
Yeah.
And if you become complacent, those demons come back in.
Exactly.
The devil's always waiting for that little crack that he
That's
can
right.
exploit.
Something that you don't find quite pleasing in your marriage, or something you don't find quite satisfying, and the next thing you know, you're off to a different race, and not taking time to really analyze what's
Right.
going on.
Right.
Correct.
And being active in Retrouvaille really helps us remember to use the tools that we learned.
Yeah.
Right, because we do have ebbs and flows, and we still have lows, and we still have highs, and we're able to share those together and get through those difficult
Yeah.
times.
Now,
So-
before we get into the actual program of Retrouvaille, what you're doing, do you have children?
Yes, we have 3 children.
Well, they have to be tickled to death that you're together. Did they know of the struggle?
Especially our oldest.
Yeah.
At the time, she was 12-ish.
Yeah. Their antennas are up.
Yeah, she knew what was going on and was cognizant of that. Our younger 2, not so much, but they knew something was
Yeah.
up.
Did you ever have to have a talk with them about what was going on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I think that's important.
Yep, not in explicit detail, but definitely that, mom and dad are going through some struggles, and the good thing is we're working on it, and with God's help, we'll get through it.
Yeah. Now, I know it's a Catholic origin,
Yep.
Retrouvaille, but it's not just for Catholics,
Correct.
right?
You can be whatever religion. You can have no religion and
Okay.
still come to Retrouvaille.
Okay.
If you happen to be exposed to the love of Christ and moved by that, so much the better. But our goal is to help the marriage.
Okay. Wonderful. So there's no type of trying to convert anybody
Absolutely
at this
not.
weekend. If you're Catholic, would there be a priest available?
Yes.
Okay. If you're, say, a Protestant denomination, would there be pastors available?
That can be made available.
Okay.
Right now, on our weekends, there's a priest available.
Okay.
We do have plans to expand into a more CMD,
Okay.
Christian multi-denominational,
Sure.
and offer both.
Okay.
But we'll always make those accommodations.
Okay. So a couple's in trouble. They want some help, but one's resistant. Perhaps in your case, when you go and start looking up Retrouvaille, what's the first step they need to do if they're really going to try and engage in this?
The first step is to, most couples go online and do a request for information
Okay.
to get more information, and then begin the registration process.
Okay.
And you can do that all online, and you'll get a call from our registration person that will make sure your intentions are to work on your marriage.
Okay.
And
Now, this is not marriage counseling.
no, absolutely not.
Okay.
None of us is a professional
And the marriages,
counselor.
the ones you take, either a marriage is in trouble or maybe people are separated. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. So what will happen is they'll get a phone call from our registration coordinator, as Tony had indicated, and they'll explain the program to both couples.
Okay.
So if there's resistance or some intrepidation by one or the other, then we can actually explain to them what to expect on the weekend
Okay.
and what not to expect.
Okay.
It's often very, very helpful to know that we are not counselors and we're just a pure ministry. We've been there, right? And so that often takes the worry and the fear out.
I think it would.
Yeah, another big help is making sure they know they're not going to be expected to air their dirty laundry or anything like
Yeah.
that. It's the work is done between you and your spouse.
Okay.
You can certainly reach out. You can ask the priest or the presenting couples for guidance.
Sure.
But you're not required to at any point.
Okay. Okay. So here the couples filled out the registration form, and now now where is this normally held at? A weekend retreat, or not a retreat. Where is this held at?
We have our weekends at Ramada Plaza on 28th Street.
Okay.
We have 3 weekends a year.
Okay.
So what are they? February, June, and September.
Okay.
So we
Yep.
have our weekends. They can register at any time up to a week before the weekend.
Okay.
And they can do that online.
Are they expected to stay overnight?
Yes.
Okay. So you
Yes.
have accommodations for them.
Yep.
Okay.
The whole object is for you to take yourself out of your normal setting,
Right.
so that you can focus exclusively on your marriage without the distraction of children.
Yeah.
All of that. You leave it. You don't even need a watch or a phone or anything.
Leave it home.
We keep
Right.
Leave the
we
cell
keep-
phone home.
Leave
We
it
take care of
home.
everything.
Computer and all that.
Yeah, we take care of the meals. We take care of everything.
Okay.
Matter of fact, when you check into the hotel, we have your keys. You don't even have to check in. You come to us.
You're
we
ready
take
for
care
you.
of everything.
Okay. So help me in just, I'd like you to describe, and not in great detail, but because of the time limitation, but give me an idea of what a Retrouvaille weekend looks like.
So after they arrive on Friday evening, they'll come down to their first set of presentations. All of the presentations are given by peers, couples just like themselves, and they'll step through a variety of different communication tools to be able to help them learn not just the concepts of Retrouvaille, about their marriage, right, and about themselves. And then that goes all the way through Saturday, from Saturday morning till very late Saturday evening, and then into Sunday. At the end of the Sunday afternoon, we do have a mass that they can participate in as well as a community. So other Retrouvaille couples may come to that as well. So it's a nice welcoming experience and a good send-off for the week.
What would be, when they're coming to these talks, maybe some type of workshops, what would they be doing in a workshop?
Digesting the tools, readdressing and reintroducing a way to communicate on a deep level within a framework that gives you safety, so you're not going to get off in the weeds and start bringing up past issues and whatnot. It's really a guided process, and it's very much taking communication back to a basic level and building that up from there, and understanding emotions from a basic level.
You know, in communication, we all know it in marriage is one of the toughest things.
Absolutely.
Because there's so much ambiguity in it, or things can be misconstrued. Do you help them to how to talk to one another?
Absolutely.
And what language to use? And
Yep, and the biggest factor is communication, and then again, emotion, like Tony had said, is really, I didn't know what an emotion was when I came to Retrouvaille.
What do you mean by that?
And what I mean by that is I didn't know how to communicate the emotion that was inside of me. Right? I didn't know a word to put to my fear and anxiety and security and safety. I didn't know the words to put to that until Retrouvaille. And I really began to learn how to communicate my feelings to Tony in a way that he could understand, and then I could be understood. And that's the framework.
And that's probably very true for men too. We're lousy at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's stereotypical, but it does not necessarily stick to a gender. There's a lot of women that, you know, if emotions were crayons, their Crayola box has 12 in it, whereas, you know, some women, they have the big 164 pack.
The big blow.
So, and learn, I mean, if you're on both ends of that spectrum, being able to communicate can be very intimidating if you're the one with the 12 crayon box.
Yeah, because you don't have the tools.
Right, exactly.
You don't have the tools. So you're helping them to develop the tools to have better communication skills. Okay, that's wonderful. And you know, is there anything in it with body language? I mean, a lot of times the body language can be very important too.
Yeah, they discuss, I mean, all of that. Body language,
tone of
eye
voice.
contact, tone of voice.
All those come into play. You know, and I find too that sometimes we men forget, and maybe women too, but we men sometimes forget how to court our wives during our marriage. And I think that's important, that we learn how to do that, to keep the marriage alive, and to keep that same understanding of the intensity of, I mean, we can't be as intense as the day we were married, but we have to keep that intensity of the love going.
Yep, Julie's my wife, but she's also my girlfriend.
Isn't that wonderful?
You know, you need to continue to date. You need to continue to be romantic and not start living just for your single lifestyle interests.
Exactly. And I think, you know, you hit the nail on the head, is that our wives really have to be our best friend. We have to be able to share with them everything. We have to be able to talk to them about things without retribution. I think that's the hardest thing at times with couples, is I tell them, look, you need to be able to talk to one another without fear of retribution from the other, or bringing up old past pains. Because that is never productive in a marriage. Once it's been resolved, it should be left alone, correct?
Right.
And all that does is, and I guess that goes down to forgiveness.
Right.
And not forgotten, because certainly you're not going to forget things, but you can leave it in the past and move and grow from them.
Because if we don't, we'll stagnate.
Right. And also realize that just like a best friend, you're not always going to be on the same page. You're not always going to be the bestest of buddies.
That's right.
But that's all right,
Yeah.
because tomorrow's another day.
You
we
know,
still love each other.
there was an amusing book, we've all read it, Women are from Venus and Men are from Mars. You know, I read that, and in many ways, I was laughing, chuckling through it. But until you understand there is a difference in our makeup, you have to learn that there is a difference between men and women. There's a big psychological difference, too.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have to deal with that. So, here we are in a Retrouvaille weekend. How many couples would typically be in a Retrouvaille weekend?
Typically have anywhere from
10 to
22.
27, I think, was our
Yeah.
biggest.
Wonderful,
Yep.
wonderful.
So-
I know it's a little crass, but I have to ask, what's the cost of a Retrouvaille weekend?
You want to cover that, or
Sure.
you want to?
So we currently charge, our registration fee is $300.
Okay.
That does not cover the entire cost of the weekend, but
Right.
that's just what we charge as a registration, and we take a free will offering on Sunday afternoon.
Wonderful.
And then the couples can give according to their means.
Yeah. You know, and that's important. There has to, if anything worth doing, it has to have some cost to it. Now, I firmly believe that, because if you offer it free, it's never taken seriously, number one. Number two is there's a cost for you to run this.
Right. Mhm.
And that's important. And I guess I would say this too. What's the cost of your marriage?
Yeah, absolutely. What's
You
the
know?
cost of a divorce lawyer in comparison?
Yeah. And how valuable is your marriage to you, that to spend that amount of money to perhaps bring it back into a sacramental relationship? What a wonderful thing that is. So, how are we doing on a success ratio? How is Retrouvaille holding up?
Retrouvaille is pretty darn good. Study was done by Detroit several years ago, and for couples that had completed the whole program, the weekend, the post program, and continued on with core, 80% of those couples that went through were still married after 5 years.
That is
and these are couples that were in dire straits. They were near divorce or divorced.
Okay. So couples that have gone through divorce, some do come back into Retrouvaille.
Yes.
You absolutely can, and you can repeat the program. So if you find you need a refresher course, go again.
Yeah. I would imagine for those couples that have already gone through divorce, this must be monumental for them to come back into that same relationship in a whole different way. Have you've seen the couples?
I was just going to
experienced it?
say, there's
Yeah.
really nothing greater than
Yeah.
seeing a couple come together when they're at the brink of divorce, right, or divorced, and they can renew their hearts and their spirits together. There's nothing greater than that.
Yeah.
I can't even describe the look and the feeling that I receive from. It's a gift.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Like I said, we started sitting this far apart, and by the end of the weekend, we're on top of each other. And to be able to sit back and see another couple do that is just God using our story to make lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
It's
What is it about what happened to you? What was going on within your psyche at the time when you were starting to have this feeling that I think there's hope here? Can you recall that?
it was for me. It was a wellspring of emotion, just a heat and a not caring and seeing what else was in the room. And really, it was almost like it was just the two of us. And as Julie said, she was having trouble even saying I love you. And by the Saturday night, when she looked at me with tears flowing out of her eyes and and told me she loved me, it was
Long awaited.
yeah, it was like coming home.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that's how Jesus feels about us when we come back as repentant sinners.
Yep.
He must have tears in his eyes at times when we think that. But you know, that really is the dynamics of Christ working within you, is that you can forsake all that past misery, look past it, and come into this relationship that you know God has ordained as sacred.
Right.
You know, so once you understand that, you begin to build that confidence again, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
remembering that when we got married, it wasn't just two of us at that altar. There were three of us.
Yeah.
It was Julie and I and God.
Yeah.
And though we lose sight of that some days, God doesn't.
Let me ask you both this question. When you first were married, and obviously Christ was in the center because of Catholic marriage, correct? Did you pray together at that time?
I think we did at first, and then over time lost that connection.
Yeah.
You know, and lots of different things that happened in between that time. But I think there was definitely a disconnect between putting God first in our marriage.
Yeah.
right? And I remember you had asked about our Retrouvaille weekend, and that was the moment where I've brought God back into my heart. I considered myself to having a very close relationship with God up until the point of we were one day close to divorce.
Yeah.
And at our Retrouvaille weekend, it came back, and I began to receive the love again. And this was a wellspring of emotion.
So did you fall out of love, or at least you fell out of love with one another, or did you somehow fall a little bit out of love with God?
Oh, both.
Both.
Yep, I questioned for a very long time.
Yeah.
Where is my God? And I begged him for him to come back.
Yeah.
And that weekend, I realized, and one of the sayings couples will hear is God does not make junk. And I realized I am not junk, and God does love me.
That's right.
And he wants me to work, and he wants our marriage to work. And so
Yeah.
that's really the love. It began, my relationship began to grow from there again.
Yeah. I heard one time it says if you think, if God isn't still there, guess who moved? It normally isn't him.
Yeah.
Right.
It's us moving away from God. Particularly, I've seen it in marriages too, when people have that sense they want to go their own way, it's easy to remove God from the picture. And you start down that journey that is never good. And when you start to grow back into that relationship again, as you have, and thanks be to God, that you have the
Right.
courage to do it. Because there'll be a lot of couples who will not take that leap. They'll think their marriage is too far gone when they don't understand that it's still there. The core is there. They just got to open it up again and peel back all those layers of hurt and
Right.
pain and suffering.
And there's a fear too. There's a stigma attached with admitting that you have problems in your marriage.
Yeah.
And the reality is, the numbers reflect that at least 50% have what they view as unsurmountable differences and troubles. And God is the way that you can get through those troubles.
Yeah.
So,
So basically, Retrouvaille really helps start peeling back the onion skin.
yep.
Absolutely.
Start getting to the root of the problem, the core of the problem, and starts to acknowledge that we have problems. And like you said, when we first started out the program, you said that from behind people outside looking in thought we were a great couple.
Right.
And that's so true, because there's this real sense of pride within us that won't allow people to help us when we're in trouble. And thanks be to God you recognize that and come to that understanding of what needed to be done. But this has been it's been a wonderful time having you here, because I hope that those who are watching us really have a sense that there's hope for their marriage. I know as we sit here, we know that many of them are struggling in their marriage right now. And if they just take the time to go to, how do we spell Retrouvaille so they'll know to go on that?
Retrouvaille.
Okay, pronounced Retrouvaille.
Yep.
I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for the courage to tell your story. I want to say thank you for your ministry, because it's so powerful. And I'll just continue to pray for your marriage, that God will continue to bless you.
Thank
you
you
so
very
much for
much.
being here, Julie. Thank you so much, Tony,
Bless
for
you.
being here.
Thank you.
I want to thank all our viewers for watching. As always, may Jesus Christ be praised, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.